Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Cyberstorm Access has been revealed for quite a while now, which means it's time for my favorite part of new releases, more lore. Today, we're going to follow up on our interdimensional warrior Vsauce, whose name I've pronounced like that for so long that I don't plan on changing it anytime soon. Or until I get some kind of confirmation for proper pronunciation. Anyway, last we left our hero, they were squaring off against the malicious Arisehart, who sought to wield the power of hatred to dominate all they could lay their sinister hands on. And the last thing we saw was a clashing of fists, with Vsauce having used the Trivikarma technique, and now we pick up in a warm, glowing fairy tale land with more chibis in it. Bit of a scene change, but worry not, all will soon be revealed. Or at the very least, I'll explain it as best I can with the information we have available. So let's take stock of these new characters, tree how they all work together, then figure out what exactly is going on here. It's time to get to the root of it all with Manadome. So what's the deal with Manadome? Well, they're a series of fairy monsters, with a warrior heart monster, because of course there is, of various attributes, and honestly, it doesn't do a whole lot. It's got one synchro monster it's really good at making, and that's the whole shtick, though it can make a few other synchros if it wants to. It doesn't really lock you into anything in particular. But plenty of decks make synchros. What makes Manadome so special? Well, on destruction, our tuners summon other copies of themselves from the deck when destroyed, no matter who destroys them, which means it works particularly well with Vsauce. In fact, because they mesh with us so well, I think it's worth revisiting him one more time. Vsauce Starfrost is a level 6 light warrior tuner monster with 2100 attack and 1500 defense, and if they're in your hand, you can target a monster you control with a different type and attribute than this card, destroy it, and if you do, special summon this card from your hand. And when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can make this card gain attack equal to half the original attack or defense of that monster, whichever is higher. Your choice if tied. Now, you're not going to get a lot of mileage out of that effect. The important one is the special summon. It has variable synergies with other archetypes in the same story, but it works very well here because it's going to trigger your effects for free. So expect Manadome decks to be running this unironically, whereas you might see it in the others to get random effects that call for having this monster on the field. Good to have you on the team, Michael. Alright, reintroductions are out of the way, let's focus back on the main event. First up is Manadome Meek, a level 2 water fairy tuner monster with 0 attack and 1800 defense, and if you control a Vsauce Starfrost or a monster with 1500 attack and 2100 defense, you can special summon this card from your hand, and you can only special summon this card this way once per turn. If this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon a Manadome Meek from your deck, then you can increase that monster's level by 2. Now, I shouldn't have to remind you why this card cares about monsters with 1500 attack and 2100 defense, because you have been watching the Vsauce videos, right? But just in case you're just getting into the lore, all of Vsauce's body doubles have the same stat line, 1500 attack and 2100 defense. So you could technically run this in any of those themes as well, which would give them some nifty synchro access. And when combined with Vsauce, you get to essentially summon them for free, giving you a level 6 tuner, and either a level 2 or 4 tuner, depending on if you use the level buff effect. Now, you might be wondering, why would having multiple tuners with no non-tuners available be a good thing? Ho, we'll get to that in just a second. But for now, just know that it is, in fact, amazing. So don't be shy about using them. After all, the Meek shall inherit the synchros. Manadome Hearless is a level 2 Earth Fairy Tuner monster with 0 attack and 2000 defense. You can special summon this card from your hand if you control Vsauce or one of those 1500 attack, 2100 defense monsters, and if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon another copy of this card from your deck, and synchro monsters you control gain 500 attack during each battle phase this turn. This is an interesting buff because it doesn't apply immediately. It's more like a weird lingering effect, which I am thankful for. If it only worked on synchros you already controlled, you'd have to find a way to make the synchro first, then summon this for its own destruction. And it should be noted that while you can only special summon these Manadomes from hand once per turn using their condition, their floating effect is not a hard once per turn, so you could stack this again to give your synchros 1000. That's kinda neat. And because it doesn't specify any specific synchros, this will technically give a healthy boost to any synchro you go into. So even if the synchro of your choice isn't very strong, Hearless means you'll have nothing to fear. Manadome Cards is a level 4 light warrior monster with 1500 attack and 2100 defense, and during your main phase, if this card is in your hand, as a quick effect, you can target a Manadome monster or a monster with 1500 attack and 2100 defense you control, destroy it, and if you do, special summon this card. And if this card is normal or special summoned, you can add a Manadome card from your deck to your hand, except a copy of itself. So this is the requisite warrior of the bunch, and is a lovely extender and play starter. It pops your Manadomes to trigger their summon effect, just like Vsauce does, and searches out any card in your theme when summoned. It's basically anything you could ever want in an archetype, but hey, big shocker, the Vsauce lookalike being a 3 of must play in your deck. Where have I seen that before? Manadome Prime Heart is a level 10 light fairy synchro monster with 3000 attack and defense, requiring, and get this, 1 or more tuners and a light monster as material. Don't worry, we're gonna get how wild that is in just a bit. This card can make a number of attacks each battle phase up to the number of tuners used as its synchro material. Your opponent can't target this card with card effects if it used a Manadome tuner as material, and if this face-up synchro summoned card in its owner's control leaves the field by an opponent's card, you can special summon one of your Vsauce Starfrosts, or one of your monsters with 1500 attack and 2100 defense that's banished or is in your grave. Okay, let's circle back to the elephant in the room. Yes, this is the first synchro monster since XX Saber Gothams that you can use all tuners on. Jack's double tuning exists, sure, but that still needs a non-tuner to work. And while you can use a non-tuner for this one, that last part just says it needs a light monster, but it doesn't say it needs a non-tuner light. So because of this, you can pair your Manadome tuners with Vsauce, who is also a tuner. You can either use Vsauce and a level boosted Meek, or a Vsauce and 2 level 2 Manadome tuners, in which case this gets 3 attacks, and nothing about this effect says those attacks have to be on monsters. Combine this with that targeting protection and a floating effect for when they get past this, and you've got a very capable game ender on your hands. And because of the material requirements, it may crop up in lists you may not expect. I feel like it's only a matter of time before this becomes the go-to junk speeder payoff, and that's just prime. Manadome Abscission is a normal spell card that targets a monster you control, destroys it, and if you do, adds a Primal Planet Calorium from your deck to your hand, which is our deck's field spell. Or, if you already control Primal Planet Calorium, you can add a Manadome spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, except a copy of this card. You can also banish this card from your grave to special summon a Vsauce Starfrost, or a monster with 1500 attack and 2100 defense from your hand. This is another card that pairs very nicely with your Manadome tuners, so you'll just get another copy back and gives you access to your impeccable field spell, which we'll get into in a moment. And it even comes with an alt effect if you already have the field spell, turning this into another on-theme spell or trap card to really maximize your utility. It may seem like a pretty brainless way to build a deck where everything is at your fingertips at times, but hey, sometimes you just want a piece of that low-hanging fruit. Manadome Imagining is a normal spell card that has you revealing a Manadome monster or a Vsauce Starfrost in your hand. You draw 2 cards, then place a card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. You can also banish this card from your grave, then target a monster you control with 1500 attack and 2100 defense, and it's treated as a tuner for the rest of the turn. That last one doesn't really add a lot of immediate value, but can help you with bridging the gap on getting to the synchros you need, and can even add more attacks to your Prime Heart. But the primary draw is the draw. And what I like best is how it interacts with Garnets, those cards in your deck you never really want to actually see in your hand, but are nonetheless integral to your combos. Now, Manadome doesn't really have any of those inherently. Its primary function, aside from drawing new cards, is to put your Manadome tuners from your hand back into your deck, since their floating effects only pull from the deck. But it does mean you can now include engines that do have Garnets, because now you have a way to reset them even if you draw them. An understated but very potent effect. I can only imagine the kinds of things you can get up to with this. Primal Planet Calorium is a field spell card, and when this card is activated, you can add a Manadome monster or Vsauce Starfrost from your deck to your hand. While on the field, light monsters you control gain 100 attack for each tuner you control or is in your grave, and if any number of face-up tuners you control are destroyed by a battle or card effect, you can target one of them and special summon it. This is another really great piece of support that not only searches us our monsters, as these field spells tend to do, but also keeps our tuner supply stocked up so we can make sure we have enough to go into Prime Heart. It even makes Prime Heart more dangerous. 100 attack per tuner isn't a lot, but when you have 2 or 3 tuners, being added to a monster with multiple multiple attacks, that can cause a huge boost in overall damage that can't be overlooked. Heck, it'll stack with the bonus you're presumably already getting from Hearless. Your opponent might underestimate your ability to put in damage when looking at just the tiny orb creatures, but once they see this, they're gonna change their tuners. Manadome Break card is a normal trap card that targets a tuner or synchro monster in your grave and special summons it. Then, if it was a light monster, you can destroy a monster your opponent controls with equal or lower attack. And if a Vsauce Starfrost and or monsters with 1500 attack and 2100 defense you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your grave instead. So hey, you get a pretty sweet revival tool, and while you don't get any of Primal Heart's bonus effects if summoned this way, they're still pretty big, and will end up blowing up something with 3000 or less attack when they hit the field, which covers, most monsters. And even things above 3000 aren't necessarily safe because of your field spell. There's also the little protection that you get set up in your grave, though it only works on Vsauce and their clones, not any of your Manadomes or extra deck monsters. It's weird that it's a Manadome card in that regard, because it very minimally protects Manadomes, but the rest of the card is pretty on point. This is just a really strange break from the usual design. Manadome Reframing is a counter trap card that can be activated when a spell or trap card or a monster effect is activated, while you control a synchro monster to negate the activation. Then, if you have a Vsauce Starfrost or a monster with 1500 attack and 2100 defense on the field or in the grave, you can also destroy that card. You can also banish this card from your grave, then target up to 3 Manadome monsters in your grave and shuffle them into the deck. You don't draw any cards for this, but considering how fast you can churn through your Manadomes with those floating effects, it's still pretty helpful. The main effect is also really nice. The destruction being tied to having a Vsauce or their clones in rotation kinda sucks, but you're very much incentivized to run them, so it's not too bad. And besides, if you're running Prime Heart, which tuner you think is going to be in the grave for it? And even if you don't get the destruction, you don't always need it. It's kind of worthless against things like normal spells and traps, not to mention hand traps, or at least the Ash variety, not the Gamma variety. It might seem like you're missing out, but all it takes to really appreciate this card is to reframe your perspective. Alright, that does it for the Manadome cards, but we've got a small group of other related cards that we should cover, as they're all related to Vsauce in one way or another. Vicious Astroud is a level 8 Dark Fairy fusion monster with 3000 attack and defense, requiring Vsauce Starfrost and another monster with 1500 attack and 2100 defense, and must be special summoned from the extra deck by banishing the above cards you control from your field and or grave. It can be destroyed by battle, and if this card is special summoned, you can target one other monster on the field and destroy it. And if you do, this card gains attack equal to half the destroyed monster's original attack or defense, whichever is higher. What a familiar effect. But yeah, this is a pretty cool card that gives you more of a reason to play Vsauce Starfrost and its associated themes, especially because you don't have to worry about setting up a particular field. And when you do summon this, you get a big monster, free removal, and it gets even bigger after that removal. There's also a lot to unpack here in terms of lore, but we'll get to that later on. For now, the name is more than appropriate because this thing is vicious. Kashtira Axtra is a quick play spell card, and if any number of face-up Kashtira Xyz monsters you control are destroyed by a battle or card effect, you can banish a Vsauce Starfrost from your hand, deck, or monster zone, and if you do, special summon a Vicious Astroud from your extra deck, ignoring summoning conditions. And if this card is banished, you can target one of your banished Vsauce Starfrosts and add it to your hand. This is the primary way you're going to access Vicious in Kashtira, considering that it's the one theme that doesn't actually play very well with Vsauce. And Arise Heart ain't exactly doing us any favors since it basically shuts off the graveyard. And it thankfully even gets you back Vsauces that are banished, so you can do this all over again. Though you gotta be careful with this one, Kashtira Axtra really shows the dangers of catching them all. Put too many of your clones together and you'll turn into a massive death creature. How's that for a fusion? Wait, does that mean that Vsauce is QREM? World of Boundless Consciousness is a normal trap card that you can activate if a Vicious Astroud is on either field. You target a card on the field, destroy it, and if you do, if the destroyed card's original name is Vicious Astroud, you can special summon one of your banished Vsauce Starfrosts. Otherwise, you can make a Vicious Astroud you control gain 1500 attack. This is a bit of a weird one, not gonna lie, but if Vsauce decks become major contenders in tournament settings, it might actually become a legitimate tech pick. It can be played in the theme itself to give you more removal and another big boost, but it can also be used in retaliation to destroy an opposing Astroud, at which point you get a Vsauce back. It's actually kinda cool, but only really works in the wild if it's likely both players are running Vicious. It just goes to show that lore can make a world of difference in the meta. Alright, so that's all the new cards, but what do we do with them? Well, there isn't much of a win condition here aside from summoning Prime Heart and just kicking all kinds of butt. So our goal is to get all the pieces on board as soon as possible so we can make that happen. So what can we play to help them out? First, let's take a look at Clear New World, a spell card that's reflected in Vsauce's arm. At first, it might seem really good, since it destroys our Mannadomes, but it's not going to be useful in summoning other copies of them. Even if they weren't all fairies, you have to summon a monster with a lower level. Now, if you do end up playing any level 1 monsters, this could end up being a great way to grab them while triggering your floating effects, but that's about it. At least when it comes to running a purer version of the deck. If we start playing different archetypes from across the lore, then things get a little funky, especially if we combine this deck with Tearlaments. By popping Sheeran, Havnus, or Rhinoheart, you can summon a Manadome tuner while triggering the effect of those Tearlaments. And since neither theme locks you out of the other summoning methods, you can mix the power of Fusion and Synchro with these spare tuners. Ain't that a trip? Clear New World can also be used as a bridge in Scareclaw and Kashtira, but they won't really have the same kind of synergy. Vsauce and Rheum Heart are enough material to make Prime Heart, but in that scenario it's not exactly powerful. You don't even get the targeting protection because Vsauce isn't a Manadome, so in this case, go ahead and Synchro Summon for Chaos Angel. Use those two monsters, and you get the on-summon banish, and keeps all Synchro monsters you control from being affected by your opponent's activated monster effects, which is undeniably snazzy. But as long as we're covering level 10 Synchros, that's not even the best we've got. Barone is of course a free negate, and once you've used that effect up, you can trade them in to revive Rheum Heart for a free search. You can also make Cheng Ying for an amazingly defensive body that provides some ridiculous buffs and debuffs, and that's not even the best of it. Once you have Vsauce and Rheum Heart in the grave, you can banish both to get Vsauce's Astroud, which will not only prompt the destruction effect that it gets, but Cheng Ying's banishes. It's so cool. As for a silly tech pick, Battle Tuned is really funny. Sure, you could instead banish Vsauce to help make Astroud, but you can do a ton more damage by putting a 2100 point boost on Prime Heart. Yeah, Astroud is 3000, but even one extra attack on Manadome means 4200 extra attack on board. So if you want to go for lethal even faster, this is the card to do it. Okay, we've covered all the cards and what you can do with them mechanically. Now it's time for what you all really came here for. Lore. Like I said at the top of the episode, we are currently in the aftermath of the clash between Vsauce and Arisehart. The right arm of the cosmos wielded by our protagonist appears to have been shrouded in dark power, and via the card Kashtira Axtra, you can see that Vsauce won the battle. Not only does the art show fragments of Arisehart being absorbed, the card itself is triggered when a Kashtira Xyz monster is destroyed. But the cost may have been too great, because what happens when you activate Axtra is bad news, as it brings forth the terrifying vicious Astroud, the form of Vsauce after having absorbed their 3 heart counterparts. And that's not just speculation, everything from the art to the mechanics reinforce this reading. While its fusion material being a Vsauce and 3 monsters with 1500 attack and 2100 defense would have been much more accurate, the fact that it requires even one of them is a huge hint. And incorporating Vsauce's effect to gain attack by destroying something is a nice touch. The art also has a slew of clues, from the blatant hound sword that's evocative of Triheart, to the more subtle whip spears of Kaleidoheart. Arisehart appears to be missing from this arrangement, but the wings on Astroud are a deep red and share some resemblance to Arise's. But what I like most are the 4 sparks hovering around Astroud's right claw, the same comet-shaped flames that we've seen in many cards before, when Vsauce was traveling throughout the universe. And we can tell which flame belongs to who because of the color of each of their hair. Vsauce is light blue, Rykard is green, Rhinoheart is deep blue, and Arisehart is red. But what exactly caused this transformation? Well, I have 2 theories. One is that Vsauce has been overloaded, and the large intake of power, not to mention the psyches of 3 other beings, has caused Vsauce to turn into a vicious beast. But what I find more compelling is that this is Arise's last gambit. They've already shown that they can steal the power of other hearts, as seen in Scareclaw to Fang, so while Arise was defeated in battle, their essence may still be around, acting on its own free will, kind of like how Lightheart is still their own entity even after being defeated. And once they've been absorbed, Arise Heart begins to exert control, resulting in this abomination. But what does this mean for Calarium, land of the Manadome, and the fifth world of destruction? This is set up to be another world akin to the others, but given what we see, I think it's safe to assume that Calarium is the internal world of Vsauce, not its own specific world. First off, let's take a look at Riemhart, who looks exactly like Vsauce. Okay, that's not really groundbreaking considering the clones, but this looks almost exactly alike. Normally, the clones have a different hairstyle and clothing and other accessories, and yeah, the hair here is slightly different, the bangs are a bit diverging, and Riemhart has that kickin' ponytail, but the armor is exactly the same, the only difference appearing to be the greaves that Riemhart has. Although there is one other key piece missing from their ensemble, Riemhart doesn't have the right arm of the cosmos, which to me makes sense in this context. The arm appears to be the focal point that absorbs the other hearts, but as a creature of Vsauce's mind, they wouldn't exactly need that. But the final thing about Riemhart that cinches it for me is that constant golden glow, which just feels very ephemeral. But what about the rest of the Manadome? Well, the fruits of the trees seem to me like a dead giveaway. We haven't seen any of the other worlds have a tree that reflects aspects of the others, and both Reichphobia and Pearl Reno are places Vsauce has been and has absorbed that world's heart, so to speak. So if this is a mental world, it makes sense that the central landmark, a giant tree, having their souls be some kind of fruit connected to it lines up. In fact, if I could go a bit further, I wanted to try and identify what kind of tree this might be, but I haven't had any luck in that so far, if this is supposed to be a parallel to a real tree at all. My first guess was that this was supposed to be a Bodhi tree, the kind that Siddhartha Gautama meditated under to achieve enlightenment, and thus became the first Buddha. But those kinds of trees have heart-shaped leaves, and if we take a look at Abscission, we can see that's not the case here. The closest plant that these flowers look like are lotuses, which don't grow on trees, so I feel a little silly putting so much stock in it here, but they are associated with spiritual awakenings and enlightenment. This could indicate that the tiny creatures within the flowers are nascent reincarnations of the other hearts, elevating them to a higher plane by shedding them of their worldly desires. But again, this isn't fact, more of an educated hypothesis. Now, having hopefully established that we are now inside the mind of Vsauce, we can better understand why Vicious Astroud is making an appearance here. Whether it's the embodiment of primal, mindless rage, or an extension of Arise Heart trying to assert their dominance, Riem must now do battle with this demon for control of Vsauce. Astroud appears out of nowhere, firing blasts that look like the soul flames of the three hearts, plus Vsauce, with two of them taking out two fruits of the tree. And I hardly think that it's a coincidence that the two colors of blasts that hit, deep blue and green, match up with the two Manadome tuners that have been released so far. If these really are fruits meant to give rise to new forms of the heart monsters, it's not in Astroud's best interest to allow them to mature, so destroying them is a top priority. From what we can tell though, the battle is fairly straightforward. Riemhart draws on the power of the remaining fruits to become Prime Heart and absolutely kicks Astroud around like a beanbag, culminating in one of, if not the, sickest aerial dive kicks I've ever seen on a card. Though I believe it'd have to be the technique used in Manadome Breakheart that actually makes Astroud vulnerable to destruction, as the fusion can't be destroyed by battle. Also, the move is called Breakheart, and the fight is against an amalgam of the heart monsters. The dive kick, though, is what allows things to move on to the next step of the journey, the reframing. Prime Heart makes contact, and like so much glass, shatters Vicious Astroud, and also the world of Calarium. World of Boundless Consciousness shows Vsauce floating in a void, with parts of their vicious hide crumbling away, and shards falling all around them. And in the most prominent shard of them all is the Tree of Calarium. And so, in this world where consciousness has no end, this starbound warrior has infinite possibilities stretched out before him. Heck, even the mechanics of the card itself shows a very important choice, either giving you the chance to destroy Vicious or empower it. The amount that it boosts by is also very deliberate, as it would be half of Prime Heart, mimicking the kind of boost Vicious Astroud would get if it destroyed it via its own effect. Either way, Vsauce must now find a path forward, harboring the fear, sadness, and anger of the other hearts, but maybe, just maybe, carrying the joy of compassion and enlightenment from Riem. But while anything is possible, what can we expect to happen? Well, for that, it's best to look at the influences on the theme. And for that, I think it's pretty safe to say that Hinduism is where we're going to find most of our answers. And thankfully, some of the translation notes and some helpful commenters pointed me in the right direction. Mannadome's name is likely derived from the name Vamana, one of the avatars of Vishnu, one of the most important deities among the Hindu pantheon. Instead of intervening directly in issues that caused an imbalance in the universe, a concept known as Dharma, Vishnu would send incarnations of themselves, the avatars, to accomplish these tasks instead. Notably, Vamana is the fifth of these avatars, which lines up with the fact that Calarium, the field spell for Manadome, is the fifth world of destruction, which is a detail on all the field spells that you would only know if you read the translations. I am once again very upset with how the TCG has handled this localization. And if you look into this more, you get some other awesome references here. The task Vamana is most known for is taking back the Trilokia from King Mahabali to restore cosmic order. Trilokia as a concept has been used to refer to a number of different trios of things, but in general, it means the three spheres. And while there's only been 2 spheres introduced as monsters in Mannadome's Meek and Hearless, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a third one representing Riseheart somewhere on the tree, probably called Hangry. You can also even see a third fruit in the field spell's art. So this battle against Vicious is probably meant to emulate taking back those spheres. And I love how the story goes. Basically, Mahabali is giving out gifts because of their great conquests, and Vamana, who's a dwarf, asks for but 3 steps of land. Whatever they can step on, he gets. And Bahamali is like, yeah, sure. Their feet are even smaller than usual, so they'll take even less land. Go ahead. Now, Bahamali's advisors catch on to this and attempt to warn him away from agreeing to this, but, you know, this is the great Bahamali, right? What could possibly stand in his way, right? But once the agreement is struck, Vamana takes on the cosmologically large size of Vishnu and uses 1 step each to cover all 3 spheres. 1 for heaven, 1 for earth, and 1 for the nether realms. And just like that, boom, problem solved, cosmic order restored. So this is why the 2 Manadome tuners are so small, because it's a reference to Vamana's size, and why Riem Heart and Prime Heart have such a focus on greaves and kicks, because of the steps. And get this, the gigantic form of Vamana is called the Trivikrama. You know, like the trap card from the last set, Trivikarma. Absorbing power to defeat a wicked ruler seems pretty on point, and this might also cast Riseheart in the role of Mahabali. It's amazing, simply amazing. I'd also like to really quickly touch on the other worlds now that I've learned about these connections. Palreno is the first world, which lines up with the first avatar of Vishnu, Matsya, who's depicted as half fish, so, you know, like a mermaid. The story features a fish that asks a king for shelter until it grows enough to fend for itself, and will help the king survive a catastrophic flood in the future. And Palreno is pretty fluttered, as it turns out. Vsauce's battle against Kaleidoheart might be a vague attempt to mirror this story, because if Vsauce is considered to be the king and Kaleidoheart the calamitous flood, them taking on the fusion would give Kit Kalos enough time to find the strength to take down Kaleidoheart themselves, growing into Rule Kalos. The king, having survived this flood, lives on to foster a new generation of humanity, which might also be why Tearlaments get a new field spell to show off the more peaceful future ahead for them. The 4th world is Reichphobia, which lines up with the 4th avatar of Vishnu, Narasimha, the man lion. And if you look at Reichardt, yeah, that fits. They're often depicted with 3 eyes, which is probably the inspiration for the 3-headed Triform. Narashima's primary accomplishment is the defeat of the Ashura Hiranyakashipu, who had received a blessing from another god, Brahma, which granted him basically conditional invulnerability. Get this, they couldn't be killed during the day or night, inside or outside a house, either in the sky or on land, in heaven or hell, by any weapon, nor by man, animal, deva, or ashura. So Narasimha basically finds a midpoint between all of these conditions, meets them all at once, then kills the guy. He does the deed at dawn, or dusk, I couldn't confirm that. At the threshold of a house, on his lap, which is higher than the ground but still connected to it, was a half animal, half human, so it wasn't a man or a beast, was done in the mortal realm between heaven and hell, and used their claws instead of a weapon. It's so cool. I love this stuff. I'm reading this stuff for the first time, it's really cool. Even the way Triheart is defeated in Sklash looks kind of like depictions of the Ashura's defeat. But what does this have to do with Reichphobia? Well, Triheart kind of has its own form of conditional invulnerability too, being unaffected by activated monster effects of defense position monsters. So how do you get past it? Well, by using another Link monster, which can't be changed to defense position by Triheart's continuous effect. So we can kind of infer from this that while each realm represents one of Vishnu's reincarnations, the hearts themselves represent the obstacle that defines that reincarnation, which Vsauce fulfills, which might go a bit to explaining why Riem Heart just is Vsauce. The sixth world is Paraisos, which is in line with the sixth avatar of Vishnu, Parashurama, and in response to the Kshatriya class abusing their power, taking what belonged to others by force, boy did we call that one, huh? Parashurama destroyed the Kshatriyas 21 times, and boy is that a specific number. First off, now the 2100 defense stat of the heart monsters makes sense, and now I can't wait to find out what the 1500 is tied to. But also, take a look at Arise Heart's material, 3 level 7 monsters. And what do you get when you multiply those two numbers together? 21! This stuff goes deep, folks, it just will not quit. So what can we expect moving forward? Well, while there are 10 reincarnations of Vishnu, we've already talked about how we're covering the 6 basic emotions as well, and we've already established the 6th world, so unless we get a big change to the formula, we won't be covering anyone from Rama forward, at least for now. This leaves us with Kurma, the second avatar associated with turtles, specifically the World Turtle. I'm putting my money on this one having the Dark attribute heart and is focused on disgust. And the third avatar, Varaha, a boar who lifts the world from the cosmic ocean after it was stolen by a demon. And that's going to be the Wind heart that's focused on surprise. As for where the story is going from here, well, something we haven't talked about is that specific reincarnations are summoned during certain periods of time called yugas, and as time progresses through these yugas, things get progressively worse for everyone in that world, until the completion of the 4th and final Kali Yuga, which leads to the destruction of that world and the birth of another. So will Vsauce end up absorbing more hearts, risking the emergence of vicious Astroud once again, and potentially continuing the cycle of destruction and rebirth, or will the cycle at last be broken? Or heck, is breaking the cycle even a good thing in the first place? We're just gonna have to wait a few more months until we get a peek at the next chapter of the world destruction story. Now, I've got to admit, I certainly don't like this story as much as the Albaz one, but I think that's because this story isn't quite as character-driven. But that shouldn't be mistaken for this story being empty. There is a lot going on here, and I can't wait to see what comes next. I also can't wait to see what you all have to say about the lore as well. After all, I'm just one guy who has access to Wikipedia, so I'm once again asking for those of you who are more familiar with Hinduism to fact check me in the comments down below, as well as providing insight that you have that I definitely won't, because as it turns out, a guy raised in North America is going to have a wildly different frame of reference in interpreting these religious symbols than someone who's actually lived it. Oh, and of course, if you enjoy the lore, make sure you like this video and subscribe, because the faster we get to 50k, the faster we get to Akiza Explained, and please make sure to share this video around. Help new fans enjoy some Yu-Gi-Oh lore, or introduce this to someone who plays who wants to learn more. It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander Green Knight, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Adam Zajdel, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Cameron Berg, Chibi Gohan, Eric, Frankie, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh, Gloomba331, Great Big Pillock, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iskander711, Ironic, John Manji, Julia Sneezer, Larakia, Manacharge, Marluxia is a Girl, Meteornus, Michael Madsen, Mighty Action X, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Rem T Bright, RJ the Jank Monarch, Ruxith Sarani, Sophie, apparently, the Charizard Flame, the Fresh Prince of Conair, the Wizard Moose and Xander Wolfensberger, Cosmic Crusaders Ariel Kersey, Bear Shark Studios, Chaz Ghost, Chris Kessler, Corbinisms, Danny Bound, Emily, Eva Padilla, Herbal D, Jesus Garcia, Kale the Dragon, Carp, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-De-Doo, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Picata, Matt Simmons, Neo Trinity 7, Nitromo, Put a Card Trooper Up My Ass, call that a card trooper and ass sandwich, but Noah Gent calls it lunch, I vote for Ophion to be banned, Sarah Lo Sulci, Shooting Star 3300, Star-Lord 777, Super Purd, Tucker Ordorn, and the legendary Raven, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. I'm only able to continue doing this thanks to the support of these lovely people, so if you'd like to be a part of these credits, help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, and get all my videos just a little bit early, please check out my YouTube membership or Patreon links in the description to see if I have anything you'd like on offer. And if you'd like to catch up on the Vsauce lore, check out this playlist of all the videos that cover those archetypes, though be ready, the early ones aren't really lore intensive because we didn't really know this was going to be a whole thing. And if you want a chance to bully me alongside a random number generator, make sure to check out Noah Jenk and I's latest series Progression Polls, where your voice shapes the format. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.